Now join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? Go ahead. Oh, over here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just my first time visiting.
We just got lost and stumbled in. Nice. Welcome.
My wife comes frequently and she said I need to come. So.
She said you need it. That's pretty common. Yeah. How long was she telling you you needed to be here before you finally gave in and said, fine, I'll go?
I actually come to the family Sangha.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So
Nice.
So then that this is got the kids. She's got the kids on hand.
Nice.
So,
Well, glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah. I need it too. That's why I'm here. What else? Who's here for the first time and why? Yeah.
Well, I got lost too for a long time.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone who's always here want to share why you're here?
Seeking peace of mind
Seeking peace of mind. How long have you been seeking peace of mind?
for a long time.
Did you say, oh God, for a long time? I didn't hear the first part. That's what I thought I heard. A long time. Yeah, well, you got a long time left, my friend, so keep seeking. That's a funny thing because, most of us, especially if you're new or at this for a while, that, we're constantly seeking. And the essence of the Buddha's teachings is that we suffer, struggle, have discomfort because of our seeking, the craving, the desiring. But he also said that there are healthy cravings and healthy desires. And one of those healthy desires is the desire to end what the Buddha called dukkha, which is your own suffering. And this is not an easy practice. It's a challenge. If you keep showing up, there's all the wonderful reasons you keep showing up, but ultimately most of us keep showing up because it hasn't fully worked yet, right? But it gets better. We learn to sit with moments that are uncomfortable. We learn to sit with moments that challenge us. We learn to sit with moments that cause us pain. And so we keep showing up, we keep practicing, and we keep working on learning to be able to sit with discomfort. And the desire for all of your pain and suffering to go away, in the matter of 45 minutes is probably not a wise desire. But if you can take little pieces of information that maybe throughout your day will help you struggle, suffer a little less, and ultimately learn to be with the struggle a little longer, then it's beneficial. So, when we have challenges in our lives, what do we typically do? Run. And the funny thing is, we run and we run and we run, and then what do we run into? More challenges. So, stop running. At least you can face the challenges without being tired. So we'll start with a meditation practice. For those who might be new or sitting for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. You're not going to float away. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside the room. Phones ring, people cough, babies cry. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. So learn to just be with whatever occurs over the next few moments as we sit. And that'll help you learn to stop running from something. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often helps if you slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on the benches or chairs, also just trying to sit up straight. Shoulders relaxed. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. You gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment. Just sitting. Breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. With the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it has nothing to do with anything I said. It has nothing to do with how we sit, or the hands or cross the legs. It has nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get every single day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap, or the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation, Buddhist practice, is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's why it's difficult. With this practice, there isn't much to figure out, which for many of us, that's what makes it so complicated. Because often we think that there's something we need to figure out. Well, if only I could figure out that meditation, if I could figure out that Buddhism, if I could figure out what this whole thing is all about. Well, most of us have been trying to figure things out our whole lives. And that's what has us all here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. This practice isn't about figuring anything out. It's about being present with things as they are. That's it. When we're present with things as they are, we can just be with it. Beyond judgment, beyond labels, beyond wanting it to be different from how it is. And just experience present moment. And to me, the practice is working on experiencing present moments every moment of your life. Because every moment of your life, there is a present moment. But often in that present moment, we spend too much time thinking about the past, worried about future. Very rarely are we actually in each moment as it's occurring. To me, this is a simple practice, but also extremely difficult. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. Things are always happening. Can we just be with them? So I'd rather just stop there and open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address, and I'll just use that to go forward. Because I'd much rather address what's on your mind. Especially the things you're trying to figure out.
How long did we sit for then?
Why?
Because I would like to meditate daily, and is there an optimal amount of time, or it doesn't matter?
Only because you're kind of already engaged in the community and you seem like you can handle it. I said why. Other people I might have said 17 minutes and 24 seconds. Yeah. You didn't count every second?
I think I fell asleep.
You and a few others. Yeah. How do you feel right now?
Very relaxed.
Very relaxed.
Yeah, very present.
It's often we ask, it's a common question how long the practice is, right? And my answers are usually the same, where, especially if you're newer to it, right? Again, wife sent you here and said you need this. Had you done meditation before, or was this first time?
Not frequently, but I've done it before, more as a student.
Okay.
In younger days.
Yeah. So most important, especially for somebody who's, either brand new or had a little experience with it and wants to integrate it into your life, is to abandon the idea of how long we sit being the important part, right? Most important is how frequent we sit. So if I told you that was 20 minutes and you got to sit 20 minutes twice a day, you already said you have 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the likelihood of you sitting 20 minutes twice a day and doing a meditation?
At work.
At work. Hopefully your boss isn't sitting there, right? So it's not like, maybe at work, great, then you can. But the reality is, most important is that you take 3 minutes every day, 5 minutes every day. Make it realistic, right? If we tell ourselves 20, 40 minutes every day, the chances of most people doing that is 0. If you tell yourself 3 minutes a day, it goes up to maybe 0.1%, and I like that. So whenever you will do it is most important, and how long you do it is really up to you. It doesn't make it bad if you sit for 10, 15, 20 minutes or an hour. But the tendency for most of us, especially if we're tired, is if we sit longer, usually we're doing what? We're falling asleep, we're daydreaming, we're trying to plan, we're trying to figure things out. The quiet is nice. Did you brush your teeth today?
Yeah.
For how long?
2-3 minutes.
2-3 minutes. How long will you do it tomorrow?
Same.
Treat meditation the same way. Just make it a daily habit, a daily routine. 2 or 3 minutes, 2 or 3 breaths, 2 or 3 seconds. And then slowly, when it becomes a habit for you, maybe you'll sit longer. Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into my question. So I used to have a very diligent daily practice, and I was fine and I felt great, and then many exciting things started to happen in my life, and I no longer had time to meditate. And then 1 week went by, and 2 weeks went by, and 3 weeks went by, and all of a sudden I feel like the only thing I need to do in my life is to sit.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I'm supposed to force myself to sit, or if I just keep going with the flow of not wanting to sit. I don't know what to do, and I know that it's detrimental to my well-being, but I'm not sitting. So what do you recommend, like to just force myself to do it, or how do I get out of this?
Well, you said you didn't have time to sit. Did you have time to eat?
Yes.
Did you have time to take a walk? Did you have time to, these things, what are they called?
Mass destruction.
Did you have time to look at your phone? Are you on social media?
Yes.
Do you watch the news?
Of course.
Do you watch TV?
Yeah.
Do you call family and friends?
Yeah.
You had time to do all of those things. My first
Right.
recommendation is to change the way we view what you said, which is very common, which is I didn't have time to do meditation. And I suggest, which you already understand from being and having been a practitioner, is the Eightfold Path. The first thing is the correct view, right? And the correct view is to look and you said it, I'm just rephrasing what you said, at least how I heard it. The correct view would be, I had so much time to meditate and I chose not to do it.
Exactly.
And this is for everybody, not just you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the most common things is, I don't have time. We have time. We just don't make it a priority. And even at the end, you said, for those who didn't hear, it's detrimental to you if you don't sit. And you know that it's the most important thing. To know something intellectually and to not really embody it and practice it isn't to know it. It's to perceive it. To know it, to understand it, is to actually do it and to live it. So you have a perception that meditation is important. You have a perception and an experience that if you don't do it, it's detrimental. So I don't have the answer for you other than almost kind of to my earlier response, put it on your phone as a calendar reminder every single day, 6 a.m. to 6:05, 10 a.m. to 10:05, whatever it is. Put it on repeat. End never. And get that reminder every single day that 5 minutes you're going to sit. Often what happens, again, contrary to those who might be brand new, those who've done it for many years often have this grand expectation and idea of what meditation is. And that it has to be at this place, at this time, with this length of time, on this cushion, with this mala bead, with this incense. And because we can't factor all of those things in our lives at every moment, we say, well, I can't do my meditation. When you're eating, eat slowly, mindfully, become aware of chewing, become aware of the smell of the food. I'm not saying I do any of that. I'm just suggesting you do it. That's why I carve out time to sit, right? But for you who's having a hard time carving out time to sit, I suggest also looking at walking can be a meditation. Talking can be a meditation. It's a concentration and focus. When you get in your car, do you drive? Close your eyes before you drive. Take it easy. Not during, right? Before you drive, take 3 deep breaths. So set a reminder and really drive home that if you don't brush your teeth for 3 weeks, it's nasty. If you don't take care of yourself for 3 weeks or 3 years or 30 years, it can also become pretty gross. And that's for all of us, you know? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You said that the Buddha said that there were good cravings, healthy ones. What's the criteria for that? I mean, how do you determine what's a goal that's really something that is healthy, or what does it mean just craving something?
So first and foremost, to understand what I feel the Buddha was meaning with healthy cravings and healthy desires is to understand that I, as an unenlightened, ignorant fool, have no idea what a healthy craving and a healthy desire is. And I, who might think I'm smart, will try to justify in my mind that it's healthy. So what I do is I look at what the Buddha said, and very clearly, is it to benefit self or is it to benefit others? Is it coming from a place of greed, anger, and ignorance, or is it coming from a place of generosity, compassion, wisdom? Is it coming from a place of, I think I'm better than everyone, or is it coming from a place of humility? So the criteria is looking at the motivation and intention behind every action. And we're very quick to justify things we do and say, well, it's for the greater good. Well, sure, it's for the greater good as long as it benefits me first, right? So to me, it's really looking at the intention and motivation on the root causes of suffering, which is the second noble truth, greed, anger, ignorance. That's it. And is it coming from a place of, these are really all the same things, I'm just saying them in different words, but pride, coming from a place of ego, or is it coming from a place of selflessness and non-attachment? And most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, our karma, which is really what we're talking about, what we think, what we say, and what we do, most of the time, if we're honest about what we think and what we say and what we do, we will know what our intention is behind it. Not to project or share with anybody else, but if I ask myself, what is my intention behind these thoughts and these words and these actions, I can honestly know, is it coming from a place of healthy or unhealthy, right? That's the criteria.
Not that I don't agree, but
You don't agree, I can see it on your face.
no,
Yeah.
I really do. But what does the Buddha say? Like, why is selflessness better than selfishness? And again, like I do agree with
Yeah.
you. I just want what the Buddha says.
The Buddha said that the root cause of suffering is a sense of self. The root cause of suffering is we think that we are separate from everybody else and that we are better or different from everybody else. We are all human. We all have a consciousness. We all have physical form. And then with that, we wake up and we think, I want food. I want water. Did you wake up and think, I hope everybody else has food and water today? Or did you wake up and think, I hope I have food and water? What that does immediately is it sets us apart from others and it says, I think I am more important. Now, I will balance that obviously with making sure that we take care of self, right? I mean, that's what the emaciated Buddha statue is about, is that he thought that if they starved themselves physically, that would end suffering. He realized that was an unhealthy view. So you must have the middle path and a balance. We can't completely starve ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But we tend to see the world, right, as we roam through. And I do this a lot with the college kids, especially as you're younger. You're seeing the world only from your lens. And that's that sense of self that says, I this, I that. I want, I need, I think, I am. And this gets into, you can look at the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra, the Buddhist teachings on duality. And as soon as we set up this dualistic mind that says, I and you, then we draw separation. And when we draw separation, we try to feed that separation. And the teachings, it's the root of our suffering is right there. Dualistic mind. Yeah. And to go beyond the sense of self, and in Buddhism it's called non-self. It doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not real, right? If I chop my arm off, it's going to hurt, right? But the practice of non-self is really critical, which is really hard because we use these unenlightened minds to try to comprehend these enlightened teachings. And so for me as a practitioner, I don't try to comprehend them. Right? I can say what I just said, but they're just words. To me, it's the practice, and that's why the practice of giving, the practice of taking care of others, the practice of getting out of your head is so important. When we help people, we embody everything I think the Buddha was teaching. And that's a heck of a lot easier to figure out. That's a feeling. Anyone here ever helped anybody? How do you feel when you do? Right? It's just a feeling. It's beyond an intellectual understanding. It's a feeling. Anyone in here ever been really greedy, angry, and selfish? How does that feel? Other than that instant gratification that you got. It kind of sucks. So it's a feeling. To me, it's not words. And that's to me what the Zen practice and experience is about. Yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, Richard, you were going to say, and then we'll go there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I find that I can meditate for approximately 5 minutes when the program switches to commercials.
Right. And that's a great point to, for those who didn't hear, he said he finds himself, he can meditate for about 5 minutes until the program switches to commercials. And so, yes, we're maybe 5 minutes of breath in, breath out, focus on breath, mind wanders, back to breath in, breath out, focus on breath, mind wanders, back to breath. And then in about 5 minutes, the mind just wanders and we're in commercial land. And we're waiting for somebody to hit the bell so we can stop. So even along those lines to the question earlier about how long, often people say, well, I meditated for 12 minutes, tomorrow I'm going to bump it to 14. And often what that means is those next 2 minutes, you're just wondering, has it been 14 minutes yet? So I can kind of check off my to-do list, meditate 14 minutes today. So it's a quality also versus the quantity. Yeah.
To follow on to his question, sometimes you see or you read a lot of sad news or a lot of sorrow news. and you have compassion for those people who are suffering. But being a small cog, there's not much you can do. How do you settle your mind with that sorrow around in the world?
So are you asking how do you find the settled mind within all the dukkha, the suffering that is in the world, right? It takes practice. How do you settle your mind with all the happiness that's in the world first? That's hard enough, right? And this really gets into the practice of non-attachment, as the Buddha taught, which is to understand that as we were born, right? We were born, the Buddha taught very clearly, there is aging, there's sickness, and there's death.
Yeah, but non-attachment shouldn't turn into indifference. That's what
It shouldn't, but it does. So it's actually not non-attachment. That's what I mean, is there's the conception, you can read non-attachment, and then you can experience or observe something that's happening and get angry right after you read non-attachment. That doesn't mean you're practicing non-attachment. That means you're practicing attachment to views. That means you're practicing attachment to wanting the world to go exactly how you want it to go. It doesn't. So looking at understanding that the world is always going to have what we call chaos. Everyone is dealing with their own challenges, their own struggles. People who cause tremendous harm and violence and rage are suffering a lot. And that's why they do that. So you bring in the practice of compassion to understand that you've been angry before, you've caused harm before, and it was because you were suffering. So when others are angry and others cause harm and others cause destruction, we understand that it's because they're suffering. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good, right? And this is, again, I reference these, I have a couple stories that drive this really, I think, to heart almost every week because they're so important when you look at the Buddhist teachings. During the Vietnam War, the monks that were being tortured. And after the war, they asked the monks, what was your greatest fear while being tortured physically? And they said, our greatest fear was losing compassion for the individuals who were torturing me. I'm not saying I can do that. I'm not saying anyone in this room can do that. But that, to me, intellectually, is what the Buddha meant by endless compassion for all beings in all directions and all times and all space. Right? That's not an easy practice. We lose compassion for the person who cut us off on the freeway. We lose compassion for the person who makes our coffee the wrong way. We lose compassion for the person who, says something mean to us. So we lose compassion for the simple things. But often we come into places like this and we want to know how to have compassion for these grand global issues. And we haven't even figured out how to have compassion for the person in traffic. Start there. It's got to start there. You ever go out to a restaurant? You ever get your food made not how you ordered it?
Yeah, I understand. Rude waiters or waiter.
Say again?
Rude waiter.
Rude waiter. Yeah, how dare they serve my food the wrong way? Yeah. So it's a challenge. It starts also, last thing I'll say is compassion for yourself. And when you feel anger, when you feel these emotions arise that you're reading, you want to work through, to not hate yourself for having them. That's the danger with just locking ourselves in and reading every Thich Nhat Hanh and Pema Chodron book, because we read all this endless love and compassion, and then we walk outside and we're pissed off at the first person who serves us our food the wrong way. And we're yelling at them saying, you should read Thich Nhat Hanh. Not easy, but give yourself a break. There was a hand somewhere. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the Buddha says about moderation versus sobriety?
Moderation versus sobriety, and what did the Buddha say about that? In 8 minutes, sure. There's really a couple of directions you can go with this, right? So moderation, let me break it down a little bit. Moderation in the middle path, that's one area of focus, right? Moderation. Sobriety is another area of focus. And then you can look at how you potentially bring those two together. Let me talk about moderation, middle path first, right? It's, again, the emaciated Buddha statue I referenced right behind me, for those who aren't familiar, that's him when he first was wandering the base of the Himalayan mountains, and they thought that if they starved themselves, they would overcome their attachment to physical form, that they thought that that's how they would awaken. So it said he lived on 1 grain of rice a day. He was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death. They came to a riverbed. He was offered food. Everybody, the 5 guys he was with said, we can't eat that. We're trying to awaken. We can't feed ourselves food. And he said, well, basically, I'm hungry. So he said, I'll put it in the river, and if it goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. So the bull went against the stream. He decided to eat. He regained his physical health. Right? He went on to awaken. Those 5 guys came back. They said, look at Siddhartha Gautama. It looks like he's figured something out. We call him the Buddha. We call him the awakened one. And then he taught for 45 years, and then he died. That tapestry up there above the exit sign is the image of him teaching to those first 5 disciples that left him because they thought he was a sellout. They thought he was a traitor. They thought he was a food eater. What he discovered was the middle path, balance. And it's such an applicable teaching for all people, but especially for lay people, where, the renunciate path for monks and nuns also applies to lay people. It doesn't mean we shave our heads and put on robes, but what areas of our lives can we renounce things that bring us pain and suffering? What area of our lives can we renounce things that we are so attached to that cause others harm? Where can we find a balance, right? When you go out to dinner, how much do you typically spend? Now that I'm putting you on the spot.
15.
$15. So if you went out to dinner, could you spend 10? Right? And still live, right? And the other $5, when you're potentially saying, I have no money, you now got $5 extra. Or you could take those $5 and you could buy somebody who's starving on the street a sandwich, right? How many pairs of shoes do you have?
Too many.
Too many. That was an easy one,
Yeah.
right? You could give away half of them. Would you still have too many? Yes, right? She said yes, not me. You understand what I'm saying? There's a balance, a moderation, kind of a middle path with all of this. And that middle path is different. For you, $15 is what you might spend on a dinner. And I said 10. So try that. That doesn't mean everyone in here should try 10. Maybe you spend $100 on a dinner. Try spending 80, right? You have to determine where you're also comfortable as you try some of these things. This isn't about forcing these things. So middle path is important, finding a balance. Does that make sense on that part? So sobriety. The Buddha taught what's called the 5 precepts, right? There were a number anywhere from 200 to 300 plus precepts that the monks and nuns integrated into their lives. Lay people, the basic 5 precepts that you could take formal ritual, precept ceremonies. And the 5 precepts are to refrain from lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants, anything that alters the state of mind. This isn't about legality, right? You ever had 10 beers and done anything really smart? Neither had I, right? And so with sobriety, it's to understand that once we start clouding our mind, the Buddhist teachings is not, and I'm not saying this to you specifically, but to anyone new, it's not an escape. It's not getting lost. It's not sitting under a tree. It's engaged in the world, especially for lay people. And so when we use intoxicants, we have to understand that we're clouding our mind from seeing what the actual true nature of reality is. And I can't answer that question for you. And the Buddha's not here, so he can't answer that question for you. But you can determine in your own life how and where does the middle path fit in with you, with sobriety, right? My master used to say, someone asked him, there was a precept retreat, and these people were coming over and they were saying that the country they were from, it was when they were doing business, and there were lay people, there were thousands of people there, and they said when they would conclude business, they would all toast, to the deal being done. And so the question asked the master, when we toast, a drink, what should I do? I've just taken these precepts. And the master said, what is your intention? if you hold up the glass and you toast and you take a sip and you set the glass down, your intention is to honor that moment. Now, if you do that and set the glass down and then take 12 more shots, it's no longer honoring that original intention, right? So does that give you enough to think about? Yeah. I'll kind of leave it at that. Yeah. Yeah, Al, and then we'll close.
I don't understand the benefit of those monks having compassion for the person torturing them.
You don't understand the benefit?
Yeah, it sounds like they kind of went overboard in this compassion stuff.
Does it? Yeah. Does it potentially sound like it went overboard because, and let me say this first for anyone who thinks I might be too harsh. Al's been here for years and asks the best questions. Does it potentially sound like he's gone overboard or they've gone overboard because you can't do it?
I wouldn't be motivated.
That's so then the answer to that would be yes. You can't do it. Does that mean that they're wrong for doing it? Let me start here and then I'll talk about benefit in a minute. Because you can't do it, right? Does that mean they're wrong for doing it?
I'm not saying they're wrong. I would see them as setting an example. You're using them as an example.
Yes. So let me talk about the benefit. The benefit is, you ever been angry at someone?
Sure.
Who hurts when you're angry?
Both of us.
Since they're not in the room right now, and I'm only talking to you, does Al hurt when Al is angry at someone? Come on, just work with me.
Then I'll say no.
When you're
I'm angry, I'm not hurt.
When you're angry, when we are angry, we hurt. We carry that pain, right? You asked very specifically the benefit, and you can apply this to various levels of your life. When we carry anger and hatred and disgust and all these things towards people and places and things that a lot of us have carried for a very long time, for years, we're often still angry at people that are, and it still hurts us, and they're not even in our lives anymore. We may never even see them again. But that thing they did when we were in 9th grade still hurts us today. The benefit, and I can't speak for them, they're not here, but I do use it as an example because I've applied it to my life to where people or places or things that I was angry at, they're no longer a part of my life. The only one that was hurting was me. And the benefit I got from learning to have compassion was I no longer was in pain. The benefit for them, I see, was that they were able to open their heart and have compassion also, so they didn't hurt. To me, that's the huge benefit.
I mean, not to prolong this, but just, it was very one-sided. They're torturing a defenseless person. There's no way to say, well, we're both right. Usually if I'm angry at someone, because half of that problem is me. It's very rarely just that. I can't see any balance in someone torturing.
Again, it comes from, and I'll kind of wrap up with this thought, but this isn't about right and wrong. Using your example, you said very often if I'm angry at someone, there's two of us, so I'm responsible as well. Having compassion for others, and it kind of ties back to the earlier question, having compassion for others it's not about right and wrong. It's about understanding that when people do things that harm others, their views might be filled with anger. We don't know their view. We don't know what they were taught. People who bring harm and pain and suffering to the world often think that they're doing what's right. You don't have to agree. You don't have to have compassion for them. I'm just sharing what I see. It's like I said last week about Azim, whose son was murdered. Azim Kamiza, Tariq Kamiza Foundation, 20-something years ago, his 20-year-old kid was murdered by a 14-year-old gang member, Tony Hicks. It was big news in California because it was the first juvenile tried as an adult. It was a gang initiation. Have you heard me tell this story? And
I remember it.
Yeah, and Tony had worked with them, volunteered with them for about 2 to 3 years with Azim every day. Well, not every day, but a lot. And he reached out to Tony and the grandfather and said, I forgive you for murdering my son. He said, I see victims at both ends of the gun. Our family lost our son. Your family lost your son because he thought he was doing what was right. He thought that the only way he could fit in this society was to join a gang. He saw victims at both ends of the gun. And he chose, I've heard him tell the story thousands of times, he chose forgiveness because it was the only way that he could live. So these things are humanly possible. Do I think that any of us are there? But does that mean, I always look at, when I look at Buddhist teachings, and I'll just close with this thought, there's so many things the Buddha taught. Like when you look at like the core teachings, and we'll read it and say, I can't do that. My suggestion for everybody is not to discount that and think that that's bad or wrong. Just be very honest with the fact that we're not ready to have that level of compassion in our lives. And be okay with that. So, I'll close with that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Max during his time of healing and his family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.